Remember Silence of the Lambs? Remember Seven? Osgood Perkins remembers. That's why in 2024 he gave us Longlegs. Though it wouldn't be fair to call it a rehash or knockoff, that would ignore the purposeful nature of it, the talent involved, and the goal of using the familiar to draw you into something new. The first thing that brings you into Longlegs is the 70s style, nostalgic and appropriate to the satanic story. The second thing is this guy, the bizarre creature brought to creepy life by Nicolas Cage. And thirdly, yes, those story beats that remind you of all the great serial killer movies you've seen before, the ones I mentioned, but also others like Zodiac. The way Perkins describes it is that he had a theme he wanted to write about, something that was true for him. That theme, he told The Wrap, was it's possible for parents to lie to their children and tell them stories. Then he needed a delivery system of that truth. He figured a serial killer movie could draw a lot of eyeballs, and there hadn't been any really good ones since he was a kid in the 90s. That's when he realized it was the perfect genre for this story. Quote, "What if an audience was given a chance to see Silence of the Lambs again? Wouldn't they like that? Wouldn't they take that hook?" And take that hook they did. I remember when it came out, everybody was talking about Longlegs. Before that, Perkins directed The Black Coat's Daughter, I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, and Gretel and Hansel. But Longlegs is the first time I heard his name, though it did sound familiar, because he's the son of Anthony Perkins, best known for his role as Norman Bates in Psycho. So, horror is in Osgood's blood. Speaking of blood, let's not put it off any longer. Longlegs, let's dive into it. And this movie gets weird, so we'll break down everything, what actually happens, what the ending means, and we'll do a little what Longlegs is really about to unpack the themes and meaning. The movie starts on red squares, technically rectangles, because the opening was shot for a 4:3 aspect ratio on 35mm, and we see song lyrics from T-Rex's Get It On, later renamed to Bang a Gong to avoid confusion with Get It On by Chase. Those lyrics? Well, you're slim and you're weak. You've got the teeth of a hydra upon you. You're dirty sweet, and you're my girl. Yes, I don't mind if you clip that out and play it to yourself every day because you want to hear me call you dirty sweet. After the red, the movie actually begins from the perspective of Longlegs himself. We watch from inside his car as he pulls up to a house. A little girl in that house spots the car and heads outside, where she meets Longlegs. At first, she can't find him, but he calls her over with this sound. Cuckoo. Dumb kid. Didn't your mom tell you not to talk to strangers? Well, Mom, he said cuckoo. I thought it was a bird. And you can't blame me, I have bird blindness. And that reference gives you a pretty good idea when I wrote this video and what I was watching at the time.
What kind of man takes advantage of another man's bird blindness?
Once the girl meets him, Longlegs is filmed in a very uncomfortable way, where the top half of his face is unseen above the frame. He speaks in a strange, high-pitched voice, a voice only Nicolas Cage could dream up.
There she is, the almost birthday girl. It seems I wore my long legs today. What happens if
He bends down to look at her, but we cut to the title card so fast, you barely register his face. So much about this opening grabs your attention, like the aspect ratio you aren't used to seeing on the big screen. That also establishes the period piece setting and feels more like home video, which works well as the aesthetic for flashbacks. And with the way so much of Longlegs' face is obscured, it feels like we aren't supposed to see it yet. The language of cinema tells you it's being saved for a later reveal. When he bends over into frame, it's a violation, and that's the sensation you're left with as the title appears. That discomfort sets the tone for the movie. As the opening credits roll, the picture expands to widescreen, and finally we find out the movie will be told in parts, and part 1 is titled His Letters. Dividing the movie into chapters further adds to its vintage feel, right alongside the early 90s setting. Tell me if you feel the same way, but it almost elevates the movie automatically, like my brain is tricked into thinking I'm watching something older, a film that people might recommend alongside classics like Silence of the Lambs. It lends the movie, fairly or unfairly, an air of importance that makes me pay closer attention. We meet FBI agent Lee Harker, played by Micah Monroe, who I mainly know from It Follows. She's in a room full of agents receiving their latest assignment. They're looking for a suspect and are getting paired up with partners to go door to door and ask if anyone has seen him. You might notice strange camera angles in the movie. The camera is often looking up at the characters, leaving more space above them. Talking about this choice, Perkins told Inverse, "That little bit of room up there is for all that is unseen, is on us, or is coming out of us. It's for all that is weighing down on us, emanating out of us, lurking around, waiting to pounce, or trying to leave. If you put that in the frame with your people, it's just rich." As the audience is watching, I don't know that the thought will consciously enter their minds, but I do think at least subconsciously we sense something is off. When you combine that with the unsettling subject matter, the devil himself appearing here and there, it's one more brushstroke in painting a mood. One more way Perkins makes this movie taste a little different and stick with you. While they're out, Harker suddenly knows which house the suspect is in. She can't explain why, but just knows. Sure enough, when her partner knocks on the door, he gets shot in the head. To be fair, she did say they should call for backup, but also to be fair to him, how could he know she was psychic? With her partner dead, Harker heads into the house, gun drawn. Inside, the man doesn't put up a fight. After that, the FBI tests Harker's apparent psychic abilities. She's shown various images and told to say the first word that comes to mind, and she's asked to guess random numbers they've selected. She gets them right about half the time.
Half psychic is better than not psychic at all, I'd say.
As dark as the movie gets, it does have a sense of humor, which I think fits Perkins' approach. He's trying to talk about dark things, and to almost trick the audience into confronting them. He uses familiar touchstones that remind us of all those classics from the 90s, and he uses humor. A couple of tools to make the darkness palatable enough, the audience is willing to walk the path with you. I also love the movie's frank approach to the supernatural. The character shows psychic potential. Of course the FBI would study that, and we get to see some of the process. It's fascinating to watch, and contributes to realism even when approaching something as fantastical as the devil. Having proven her strange ability, Lee Harker is put on an important investigation, one that's been ongoing for 30 years, the Longlegs case. In that time, 10 families have suffered the same fate. One day, the father snaps. He kills them all, including himself. The natural conclusion would be the fathers are the guilty parties, but after each incident, a letter written in a coded alphabet was left at the house. The same handwriting in each case, and all signed Longlegs. Someone or something is making the fathers do these awful things. Lee's superior, Agent William Carter, walks her through it all. What do all the families have in common? All had a daughter whose birthday landed on the 14th of any given month, though only one family was actually murdered on that date. You know when you watch someone doing an investigation in a movie and they have one of those crazy boards with strings attaching everything? A lot of times when I see that, I'm like, is that really helpful? And then they come to a conclusion and I'm like, I don't know that you needed the board to get there. But I gotta say, this investigation feels so genuine, partly because the documents all look so legitimate. And it could be boring, but it actually becomes a pretty emotional scene because 911 calls related to the case are played over it. It's almost like getting flashbacks to the crimes themselves without breaking from Lee's point of view, flashing back to something she couldn't possibly have seen. It's another great shot, too. The contrast of her and those files against the red carpet, the top-down view like an unseen force is looking down at her. By the way, while she's going through the files, you can see the devil over her left shoulder next to the American flag. Perkins has the devil appear a few times throughout the movie, sometimes in obvious places, sometimes less obvious, like this. According to Perkins, the demonic cameos are a reference to the classic idea of subliminal messaging often associated with Satanism, like the classic example where certain records could be played backwards to unveil hidden devil-worshipping messages. The images are also a reminder of the devil's constant presence in Lee's life, especially as she delves further and further into the case. Lee spends all day looking at those files. Carter finds her passed out in front of them, then invites her for a drink. She doesn't drink, but that's okay. He'll cover that front, while she tells him her thoughts on the case so far. There's no physical evidence of Longlegs ever being in any of the houses where the families die. It's like he tells them what to do, and they just do it. Carter notes that it reads like a page out of Manson, which triggers a thought for Carter. Manson had accomplices. They spend too long at the bar, which means Carter gets home late to his family. Lee meets his wife and daughter, which makes for some fun, awkward interaction.
Get to come meet my wife and kid.
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Do you want to see my room?
You see more of the movie's sense of humor in the girl's room. Not just the social awkwardness, but when the girl asks if Lee always wanted to be an FBI agent. She says no, she wanted to be an actress. There's a sadness to it because Lee is such a subdued character, especially in contrast to someone more outgoing like Carter. Finding out she wanted to be an actress gives me the sense that she wasn't always like this. What happened to make her go quiet? But honestly, it's also kind of funny because Monroe plays the character as fairly bland. So the last thing you expect her to say is, I wanted to be an actress. I remember laughs in my theater at her totally unexpected response. Lee returns home and calls her mother Ruth. Ruth seems nice, though similarly subdued and maybe a tad strange. She also mentions Lee's birthday is coming up. While they talk, Lee hears a ghostly whisper in her house. She hangs up, then a banging on her front door. Peeking through the window, she spots a figure staring at her, and behind that figure, faintly, we can see the devil himself. She heads out with her gun, giving Longlegs the opportunity to head inside. He drops off an envelope and takes off. They actually didn't have Nicolas Cage on set yet when this was filmed, so that's someone else doubling as him. Now on to part 2, titled All of Your Things. Inside that envelope, a birthday card. Most importantly, it's written in both English and the killer's code. So now she has the English letter translation for at least some of his symbols. Translating the card reveals a threat. Tell anyone how you got this, and I'll kill your mother. Though he phrases it less politely than I did. Not that there's a polite way to say that, but yeah. And very faintly on the left side of the screen, the shadow of the devil appears for a moment. Her work is interrupted when Carter calls her into a crime scene. Another family has fallen victim to Longlegs. This is a scene deliberately borrowed from Seven, where by the time authorities find a crime scene, the victim has already been there a long time. The family here was meant to go on vacation, so no one thought it was weird when they disappeared, so no one reported it at first. Instead, they've been left to rot for a month. Lee calls home to let her mom know that the case is getting real busy. She doesn't think she'll make it home. There's a long pause before her mom replies, almost like she's waiting for someone to tell her what to say. She only awkwardly replies that Lee should make sure they don't work her too hard. She also reminds her daughter to pray, because our prayers protect us from the devil. At that moment, we cut to an unnaturally wide shot where Lee appears small and vulnerable, completely undercutting her mom's reassurance, as though the movie is saying, "You think you're protected from the devil? Nothing can protect you." With that, it's back to research. And what says the 90s more than microfilm, other than Bill Clinton? That photo hanging up in Carter's office is confusing until you realize the movie takes place in 1993. Soon, Lee reaches a breakthrough. The commonality between families is that the daughter's birthday is on the 14th. The first murder occurred on the 14th, while the rest occurred within 6 days, either before or after. So, if you mark the murder dates, it creates an inverted triangle. As she draws that triangle, a thud at the window, and for a moment, the devil. Lee reports this to Carter and shares that she decoded all his letters. One recurring theme in those letters is a reference to the fine time we had at the Camera family farm. The Camera family was murdered like the others, but they were never linked to the Longlegs case because the daughter survived. She happened to be at school when it happened, but checking her birthday, sure enough, March 14th. As in 314 Pi Day? Irrelevant, you say. How about the fact that if you add up the first 144 digits of pi, you get exactly 666. That is true, by the way. I read it online and put this spreadsheet together to prove it. Also, looking at Harker's triangle, it's incomplete. There has to be one more murder on the 13th, which happens to be 3 days from now. Visiting the old farm, Lee and Carter discover something weird. A lifelike doll, buried, and its eyes open on their own, which is very creepy. You see more tricks with the camera here too. When they enter the farmhouse, it holds on the entrance too long, as though we're meant to see something hiding out there, or there's going to be a jump scare where a demon follows in after them. But nothing. Just another moment to add to the foreboding mood. Analysis of the doll shows the hair is human, and the head contains a silver ball, what the examiner playfully calls the brain. The ball is empty, but placing an ultrasound transducer against it produces strange noises. This has more of the clashing between science and the supernatural, which I love. It's like if someone reached into the Annabelle movies from the Conjuring verse and ripped apart the doll in search of the demon possessing it. Perkins is great at taking the fantastical and wrestling it into a more grounded setting. As he scans the ball, we also see snakes writhing. It's something Perkins does a few times in the movie, flashing quick, bizarre images. He does it in the opening credits too. I just see it as one more way to allude to a demonic presence. This is a movie where Lee can sometimes feel that presence. And since it's a visual medium, not a book, you can't just say, Lee senses a presence. You have to create that sensation through things like the upward camera angle or spliced in frames of writhing snakes. Cut to a flashback of Longlegs with the doll. He calls it Carrie Ann, the name of the girl who survived the Camera family incident.
I know you're not afraid of a little bit of dark, because you are the dark.
He covers her in a black sheet, and for a moment, her eyes glow behind it, demonically. Don't worry, all the doll stuff will make sense later. Back in the present, the examiner says he could have sworn the other night he heard the metal ball whispering his ex-wife's name. With that, Harker and Carter head off to their next destination. They found the Carrie Ann doll. Now time to visit Carrie Ann herself at Water Rock Psychiatric Hospital. Then an interesting sequence where the movie checks in on Longlegs himself. He stops at a hardware store, acts weird to the girl behind the counter.
Cuckoo, cuckoo.
I don't know what that was supposed to be.
That, by the way, is Beatrix Perkins, Osgood's daughter. More of that good old-fashioned Hollywood nepotism. If only it were so easy. If only my dad had a YouTube channel and just handed it down to me. Actually, I am distantly related to Jack Klugman, who starred in The Odd Couple. So Hollywood, when you finally get around to that remake, you know where to find me. To be fair, she's great in this scene, and hilariously unamused by Nicolas Cage's antics, and does a great job of making a specific point. Longlegs is no one special. He's unspecial enough. The movie doesn't have to leave him shrouded in secrecy until the characters find him. We're actually allowed to check in on him and spend a few minutes following him, and we see someone pathetic, someone to roll your eyes at. Talking about Longlegs' undefined origins, Perkins told Creative Writing how he thought about it. You start with a regular person like Frankenstein's Igor or Renfield. One day their life changes because they get a cold tap on the shoulder from the evil presence. Whether it's Dracula or the devil, their life is not theirs anymore. When you think of Igor or Renfield, you don't think of an all-powerful evil mastermind. You think of someone subservient. So to me, this sequence undermines and subverts Longlegs, reminding you that he's only a servant of a greater evil. That risks making the villain less scary, but to me, it only amplifies the fear of the mostly unseen force, the devil. And Cage's performance is so unsettling that while he may not be special, he is still strange, unpredictable, and dangerous. In the car on the way home, Yeah, he's still scary. What to read into this line? Calling for his parents, especially referring to them as daddy and mommy, brings to mind the idea of a child. The phrase unmake me does the same, as though he doesn't know how to conceive of death, only that he does not want to exist and begs mommy and daddy to make it not so anymore. It's a simplistic way of thinking. They brought me into this world, they're the ones who flipped that switch, so of course, they're the ones who can unflip it. It's more of painting Longlegs in a subservient position, someone at the mercy of a greater force. At the psychiatric hospital, they learn Carrie Ann has been catatonic almost a decade, ever since her family's murder. Then suddenly, 2 days ago, she received a visitor and woke up. That visitor signed in with Lee Harker's name, but the handwriting tells the truth. It was Longlegs. And there's another great example of the movie's levity here.
Does the guard check IDs?
Well, it does sound like a good idea, but no.
Lee speaks with Carrie Ann, and the conversation is as odd as you'd expect. Carrie Ann talks about what happened the day her family died. She went off to school, the doll stayed behind under the sheet with its glowing eyes. She says her mom always hated her because she came out wrongly when she was born. Mom stabs the Carrie Ann doll. Dad sits with it in his lap. He slaughters some cows. A priest comes to the house. Dad kills him, then his wife. And we don't see it, but we know he'll do the same to himself. Now, Carrie Ann is in Longlegs' thrall and says as much. She'd be happy to do whatever he asked, and even happier to do something for the man downstairs, who we can take to mean Longlegs' superior, Satan.
And boy, I just want to do whatever so he says me to do. Like if he told me to take a jumpy out a window, I'd surely do.
She'd even kill Lee if he asked her to. The conversation ends when Lee asks if she remembers having a doll that looks just like her. Carrie Ann replies, nope, and adds,
and you don't remember it either, you dirty, flirty old angel bitch.
Which happened to be my high school nickname. The actress here, by the way, is Kiernan Shipka, who appeared in Perkins' directorial debut, The Blackcoat's Daughter. I mainly know her from Mad Men. Others might recognize her as the Sabrina the Teenage Witch of the modern era. She does a fantastic job in this scene, naturally delivering dialogue in a strange, totally made-up dialect. She's also quite a subdued character, hardly altering her tone. It's to a more extreme degree than Lee, but I can't help but notice the similarity. Also, note how Carrie Ann says she's seen Lee before.
I've seen you before.
I don't think so.
Been to my house. Or someone looks lots like you anyway.
I take this to mean there's a connection between Carrie Ann and the doll. Lee was at her house with Carter. That's where they found the doll. To some extent, I think Carrie Ann herself shared in that experience. She saw them through the doll's eyes. Longlegs, meanwhile, hangs out in his workshop basement reading the Bible. For a moment, the devil joins him in the room too. And I'll try not to read much into the fact that this looks just like my room. After Carrie Ann, Carter is suspicious. Longlegs used Lee Harker's name to sign in at the facility. How does the killer know her name? And why is this cold case suddenly boiling hot ever since she was assigned to it? So, Carter pulls her file and finds out that her mom called the police on January 13th, 1974, one day before Lee's 9th birthday, making her birthday the 14th, just like the daughters of all the murdered families. Harker has no memory of her mom calling the cops or the thing she called about, a tall, pale trespasser. So she visits her mom and finds something weird. Remember the name of this chapter, All of Your Things? Well, her mom kept a lot of her things, including baby teeth, locks of hair, and nail clippings. And I'll try not to read much into the fact that I have a box just like this in my kitchen. I swear, I'm not a Satanist. A sound draws her attention to a closed door. A cockroach skitters out from under it, and the snake image is back. And so is the devil, staring at her through the window. Flashback to January 13th, 1974. Lee's mom tells her she'll take the day off tomorrow for her birthday. The arrival of the trespasser outside, and her mom heading downstairs through the cockroach door to grab a shotgun. This is when we realize for sure Lee was the girl in the movie's opening. In the present, Before Lee can check what's behind that door, her mom calls for her. Lee asks if she remembers her 9th birthday, and her mom very obviously lies.
I don't remember anything, do you?
Remember the theme which drew Perkins into this movie. It's possible for parents to lie to their children and tell them stories. One aspect of that theme he touches on here is a resentment that sometimes comes with the lie. Lee's mom lies to her daughter to protect her. That means her daughter is in the dark about some of her struggles, which can unfairly create resentment. Sort of like, you have no idea what I sacrificed for you, daughter.
I can't believe it's going to be your birthday again so soon. What a day that was. I bled.
It's unfair. You lie to your children and then resent them for it. You hear that, Mom and Dad? It's not my fault. Carrie Ann suffered similarly under some unfair guilt. She talks about how her mom hated her for causing a difficult and painful birth. Lee's mom refuses to share anything, but hints at the truth. Lee points out, "I'm not a child anymore," and her mom retorts,
You're not a child because you were allowed to grow up.
She finishes by telling Lee she kept everything. All of your things. It's all in your room. By the way, check out Osgood Perkins in a director cameo on the TV as a sort of pastor person. Upstairs in her room, Lee spots a chest she used to use as a child. In a brief flashback, we see the devil watching over her young self. In the chest, Lee finds a Polaroid photo she apparently took of the trespasser. Flashes of memories flood back, and she knows that it's a photo of Longlegs. Lee brings the Polaroid to Carter, and they send out word to find the man. Longlegs is quickly found and arrested. Before Lee goes in to speak with him, first some other cops interrogate him, and we see it on a tape recording. They do a great job recreating the aesthetic of those real-life recordings you've seen of interrogations, especially the kinds that pop up in true crime or serial killer documentaries. It makes him feel like a real killer out of history, like you would have seen him in one of those documentaries. It's a lot of footage of him rambling and creepily singing happy birthday to Lee Harker. He doesn't seem all that worried. In fact, he basically gave himself up for arrest. And now they have Longlegs, real name Dale Ferdinand Cobble. But Lee knows it isn't over. He must have an accomplice. And to complete the triangle, a family has to die on the 13th, which happens to be today. Who will that family be? Lee interrogates Cobble in hopes of finding out. Before going into the interrogation room, she remembers the day when Longlegs came. He introduced himself as a friend of a friend. What friend? His friend that lives downstairs.
You can even call him Mr. Downstairs.
Satan. He's talking about Satan. Between Mr. Downstairs and Longlegs, I gotta say, Perkins is great at coming up with weird and memorable horror names. What is the deal with that name, by the way? Longlegs. Here's what Perkins told Variety when they asked him why he chose that name. We writers just like words. We like how certain words sound and look and shape and feel. Yeah, it has daddy long legs and a creepy crawly aspect to it, but it also feels 70s to me. Almost like a Led Zeppelin song, where someone would have on the side of their van something groovy like that. It feels like a vintage word that people wouldn't toss around much today. It positioned the movie in a weird place. You don't get to fully understand it, it doesn't fully fit, which is more alluring to me and creates a curiosity that I think is important. It also allows for that bizarre sentence, where Nicolas Cage says to a young Lee Harker, "It seems I wore my long legs today," off-putting in the way it implies he is a creature capable of wearing different body parts depending on the day, and today he's chosen to wear the kind of legs a spider would. It also sounds like something a character in a fairy tale would say, further connecting this to the theme of the stories we tell children. In the interrogation room, Longlegs seems to spout a lot of nonsense until you know the ending. Then it's a lot easier to interpret his words. So we'll circle back to this scene later. For now, the key takeaway is that Longlegs lets on that Lee's mother has the answers she's looking for, then ends things with this.
Hail Satan.
Before killing himself by slamming his own head on the table over and over, until his face looks almost as bad as the guy in Smile 2 who died by smashing his own face in with a gym weight. On to part 3, Birthday Girls. In the aftermath of the insanity Lee just witnessed, Carter tells us, but wait, there's more. Carrie Ann Camera, the girl at the psychiatric hospital, is dead after jumping off the roof. It happened while Lee was in the interrogation room. So what was the point of the Carrie Ann character? From a meta standpoint, she helps us understand what the dolls do and how they impact the victim. From a story standpoint, it would seem Carrie Ann surviving her family's killing wasn't part of Longlegs' plan. At that point, once the police were involved, it would have been a nuisance to kill her. So instead, with the doll still psychically connected, he buried it and essentially put Carrie Ann into a coma. When Lee and Carter found the doll, that woke her up. So Longlegs paid her a visit and gave her some instructions. When the FBI agent visits, taunt her, give her a little info, and then when the time is right, jump off the roof. Why? Well, remember, Longlegs signed into the facility using Lee Harker's name. That's a large part of what made Carter suspicious that the case is somehow connected to Lee. That's what gets him to look into her mom. That's how he found out about her 911 call in the 70s, and ultimately what got Lee to visit her mom and start moving toward this finale. If you assume the devil doesn't make mistakes, then perhaps he decided to let Carrie Ann live, solely so she could play this role in getting Lee Harker where she needs to be in the finale. Speaking of which, another agent, Browning, joins Lee on a drive to her mother's house. There, Lee heads inside while Browning waits in the car. And Lee's mother, Ruth, approaches that car with a shotgun, then points it at Browning's head. Inside the house, Lee notices the cockroach door slightly ajar, but before she can head in, she hears the shotgun blast. As she follows the noise, notice the devil in the basement. She gets to the window in time to witness the second blast, then finds her mother with the gun pointed at a doll, a replica of 9-year-old Lee Harker. Lee tells her mom that Cobble is dead, so her mom shoots the head off that doll. A black cloud floats out of Lee's head, same with the doll. She falls unconscious, and we cut to more 4:3 flashback footage. In this flashback, Lee's mom explains everything. Longlegs is a doll maker, doing the work of the devil. In each doll, he puts a little bit of himself, using those metal balls. That gives the dolls unnatural power. The doll created in Lee's image is connected with her. Through that connection, Longlegs made her forget about his visit. That's why she has no memory of it. Thematically, I think it speaks to the sort of suppression and fragmentation that can happen with traumatic childhood memories. Though even if not entirely accessible to the conscious mind, those experiences can still be deeply impactful. They can turn the 9-year-old Lee from an aspiring actress to a quiet FBI agent hopeful. Longlegs puts a bit of himself and the devil in those dolls, just like we live with the demons of our childhood still inside us. By the way, during the flashback, another devil sighting, standing behind a young Lee Harker. And why did Longlegs let Ruth and her daughter live? It was thanks to a deal. He agreed to spare Lee's life on the condition that Ruth help him with the family murders. And so it went. He picked a family and made a doll in their daughter's image. Ruth dressed up as a nun and delivered it, presenting it as a gift from the church. Ruth just had to get the doll inside. Then, from his hiding place within the dolls, the devil did the rest, making the dad kill the family and himself. Ruth's job was only done once she watched it all happen to make sure it went as planned. Interestingly, Ruth presents all this as almost a fairy tale story.
Once upon a time, there was a girl named Lee. She lived in a little house with her mother, and no one ever came to visit them. One day, a man did come, a doll maker.
When you're a child and aren't privy to everything around you and don't understand everything around you, your view of the world is shaped so much by the stories your parents tell you, whether it's the lies, the kinds her mother once told, or the truth she's telling now. In the present, Lee wakes up on Longlegs' bed, his basement, and realizes it's her mother's basement, the door in her mom's house, which the cockroach crawled out of. The door Lee almost went through twice leads down here to Longlegs' lair. Yes, he's been living in her mother's house all these years. Love the upside-down camera, inviting us to share in her disorientation. Upstairs, the phone rings, and she answers to hear a strange voice, reminding her she's late to Miss Ruby's birthday party. That's right, another family still has to die today, and today's lucky winners are the Carters. She finds Longlegs' car in her mom's garage and drives off. She gets to the house and Carter lets her in. When he shuts the door, we see the devil's reflection on the window. Inside the house, Lee finds her mother, a doll, and a family whose puppet strings are already firmly in the devil's grip. Carter and his wife head to the kitchen. Once he stabs her to death, he returns to kill his daughter too. Lee stops him with a bullet. When her mom brandishes a knife and threatens the daughter, Lee kills her too. Having saved the daughter, finally she trains her gun on the doll. She pulls the trigger, but the gun won't fire. The movie ends on a flashback to Longlegs in the interrogation room, a moment we didn't see before.
Hail Satan.
And that's how it ends. There are different ways of portraying someone possessed. They can go into a total trance where their real self is gone, or they can still be present to an extent. The more horrifying scenario, where there's still consciousness behind their eyes, awareness of their suffering. That's what Perkins opts for in Longlegs. It's like they're putting on an act, but occasionally that real self slips through in odd ways. Like when a momentary sob escapes his wife's lips.
I'll find something to cut up the cakes with. What'd you say, honey?
Just said you have to.
Do I have to cut up the cakes? Yeah, I gotta cut the cakes. It was your stupid fucking suggestion in the first place. I have to cut up the cakes.
It's as though the spell won't allow them to plainly discuss what they're doing, but they can use the euphemism of cutting cakes. Carter can't say he's about to kill his wife, but he can say that she isn't coming back.
So sorry, I'll be right back.
No, I'll be right back. You'll still be in the kitchen.
"You'll still be in the kitchen" has to be one of the eeriest lines in the movie. It's such a callous and unglamorous way to describe death, only by reference to where their corpse is soon to be located. Anyway, you may have some questions. I think the first question most people ask is, what's the deal with Lee trying to shoot the doll, but the gun won't fire? Is it an indication that Lee hasn't actually stopped anything? Her nightmare is not over? Collider actually asked Perkins if that's how we should see it, that the devil's work is not done. Perkins says he doesn't see it that way. He explains how the devil got Lee to a point where she had to kill her own mother. It doesn't get much worse than that. So his job here is done.
So I think that the fact that the devil gets it to this place where that's what she has to do is the devil's like,
okay. Yeah. So it doesn't matter that Ruby's doll has not been broken.
not my problem.
The fact that she can't shoot the doll, to me, is more like the devil winking at her. Like, I got you good, didn't I? Similar to ending the movie on Longlegs and his Hail Satan. Just a way to say, yes, the devil's work is done with Lee Harker, but the devil himself is eternal, so he'll be back for more. Am I saying there will be a sequel, probably called Legs? No. Actually, maybe yes. Another question you might have, why did Lee's mom continue with the killings all these years? Why did she never try to stop? Especially now after Longlegs is actually dead. Well, she actually offers an answer. She says that Carter's family has to die. Lee asks her mom why she is doing this. Her answer?
If they don't die, then we will burn and twist and burn and twist in hell forever and ever.
I presume a threat was made off camera. Not just help me kill families so your daughter will live, but also now, if you stop, the devil will have your soul. And your daughters too, because she does say we, not I, will burn. Well, I would point her to the Gospel of John chapter 8, verse 44. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires. He was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. If Longlegs, speaking for the devil, told Ruth she has to kill to stay out of hell, to me that's obviously a lie, even more so in a story whose primary theme is the lies parents tell to their children. Of course, in this story, the father of lies, Satan, would be a liar. Going back to what Longlegs said in the interrogation room, first he tells Lee, "It's funny, the day you decided to go into law enforcement, you were 20. We had such a big laugh about it, although it was only me who laughed, not she." Now we know why he laughed. The irony, Ruth became an accomplice to a satanic killer, even giving him room and board in her basement, and now her own daughter decides to enter law enforcement. The irony blooms years later when she ends up assigned to that very case. Though I don't think that was an accident. I believe that through Longlegs' Lee Harker doll, the devil granted her psychic powers, knowing it would get her assigned to the high-profile case. Why? So he could get her exactly where he wanted her at the end of the movie, watching her mother take part in murdering a family, and forcing Lee to stop her with lethal force. Longlegs goes on. He refers to his accomplice as she, and Lee asks, "Who is this she?" He answers, "The seventh she," to be given the same choice that they've all been given, crimson or clover. Accept the gift and destroy it, and destroy yourself and yourselves, or keep it and bow down. At first, I assumed he meant that Ruth and Lee were the seventh family he targeted as part of the family murders that are the subject of the Longlegs investigation. But the Harker family is different. He says they were given a choice. There's no evidence that other families were given a similar choice. Another difference in the Harker case, there was no father around, when for every other family, the father was the one who did the killing. So I think that before those murders began, or even on the side while they were ongoing, Longlegs was also on the hunt for an accomplice. Perhaps he targeted families where no father was around because he explicitly wanted to recruit a female, someone who could pose as a nun, for example, someone people would be less likely to slam the door on. So Longlegs targeted these families, gave them the choice, join me, bow down to the devil, or die, along with your child or children. On his seventh try, he found Ruth Harker, who did bow down.
Bow all the way down to the dirty, dirty work.
After that, he describes their methods, saying how a nice lady with a Bible knocks on the door and provides the family with a gift from the church, a doll. He talks about orders from the man downstairs, and when Lee asks who that is, he finally tells her, "Why don't you ask your mommy?" And that's the indication that her mom is involved. With that, what else is there left to say except Hail Satan? I shouldn't have said that. Well, actually, I've been to hell before anyway. It wasn't that bad. I'm in hell? One Take's Month of Terror continues tomorrow with Late Night with the Devil.